Okay, so your first thing they want you to assemble is your piston rings on your pistons and put them into your jugs. And then they want you to install your pistons. The problem is there's a notation here to keep those two little marks together. Mine are white. My other ones weren't marked at all. But the problem is when you get the rods and pistons in, you can't really get the crankshaft in. So it's easier. I usually just put the crankshaft in first. So skip to number 13 and we'll install the crankshaft. Then we'll go back to the pistons and put them in. Okay, installing the crankshaft. Here's what we're going to do. I have my crank, my grease, my block that still has the rings in it. Okay, now this will be the front. Here's your water pump. There's the front, and that's the front of your crankshaft right there with that bearing and seal and the lower belt pulley on there. So it's a simple process. First we're going to do is we're going to pop the rings out. So I'm going to use a little screwdriver just to push them out. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, keep in mind, here's the front. That's the front ring. Okay. Your second ring, your third ring, and your last ring. Now, so the block is pretty clean, but it's got a little bit of oil inside the cylinders, you can see. So what I'm going to do, Q-tip. Now there's a secret to a Q-tip. Kind of roll that grease in there to kind of get rid of the little hairs on it. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grease up that front seal. You can use your fingers if you want, but don't need a lot of grease, but you need enough that it'll set in there, because it will all wash out with the nitro fuel down the road. Make sure the seal's in there tight. Now, same with the block. A little more grease, and I just whip it in there like that. Make sure it's on the back sides okay. Make sure you don't get any little hairs from your Q-tip, but just make sure you check it every now and then, which I'm going to do now. Put my grandpa glasses on. Now, the crank goes in from the back to the front. Set it down, walk it in, like so. This is where it gets a little tricky, because that seal in the front there, make sure it ain't pinched or anything. Make sure it goes in tight and straight, and then you just press it in little by little. You have to wiggle it and pop. It pops right in. There we go. So when you put it in, make sure this is kind of centered and just wobble it around a little bit, because that bearing is a tight fit in there. So, okay, that's the crank. Now we'll put the back of the crank on back here. Okay, so we're going to jump down to number 16, and you'll see number 94 and number 80. Okay, those are in the container. They should be in there together. We're going to find out. And those 4 little screws that go in there, they're not numbered. Okay, so here we go. Okay, in your container boxes, you're going to see it's all numbered. It's pretty simple. So, and they have everything in each category, supposedly, unless your boxes get shook upside down, or if you see that one there changes position from one bin to another. So here's what we're going to do. So you remember now, we needed cockapoo on the, there we go. These are my clips that have Loctite stuck all over them. Alright, that's part of the shipping thing. So we got 94, okay, and number 80 is the big green neoprene washer, okay. Now, same thing with the grease, just a little bit, because this stuff is pretty precision. And I'll tell you what, if it'll help, if you can't get some of this stuff together, say you have trouble getting this on, okay, like throw it in the freezer for a second, you know what I'm saying, because it'll shrink it. Okay, now the washer's on. Back of the crank. You know what we're going to do? We're going to put a little lube on that crankshaft too, just because makes things easier. That way the seal that's inside the backing plate, we're going to lube that up too. Put a little grease in there. That helps everything go together without tearing nothing, ripping nothing. Now you'll notice there's two slots on the back of your crank. One's for your starter pulley, and the other one is for your flywheel. Okay. Now that goes right in. Just push it in tight, like so. Now in the same container where the washer was, you'll see 36. All right, that's a bolt, and there should be 4 of those in here, and there are. So we'll take them out one at a time. Gotta get a magnet. Hold on, guys. Get my old trusty beat up Helen socket screw head thing, Dobby Doer. We're gonna do this up. Yeah, wrong bit. Right bit. Now, the reason I like this because it's magnetic. That's why I use this thing a lot. I got this thing at Harbor Freight for like $5. So now set that back over here, and we're going to need some thread lock, and I'm going to have to dig that out. Hang on, guys. I'll get the thread lock. Thread lock. Just put a little on there on each one, just to make sure it ain't going to vibrate out on you, because there's nothing worse than it vibrating out. I put it on a little towel when I do mine, because that way it kind of takes the excess off. Now, start them in. Don't tighten them yet. Just get them started. And if you have a magnetic tip Allen driver, it really helps with little stuff, because I got sausage fingers. That way it kind of holds on to everything. And put it right in the hole without a problem. And one more. Don't cross thread anything. You see that one there was going in hard. Now just go around and kind of snug them all, little by little, in a circular pattern. That way there, it seats the crankshaft support plate in there real nice. You notice this thing will just keep turning and turning and turning and turning. Now you don't have to overly crank these things because you've got thread lock on them. So you just snug them up. The only thing I really go ballistically tight on is, there we go. Now your crankshaft's in. That simple. Now we'll move on to the next thing, which is going to be the pistons. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's our pistons. Now, this is what I was trying to show you guys in the instructions. You see that little dot right there. Both halves of the bearing and the blower cap have to all go back together exactly the same way, okay? So I ain't gonna do I ain't taking the cap off yet because I'm gonna put the rings on first. So here's ring number 1. I'll probably do this by hand with some grease because I want to make sure you grease the whole piston up, okay? The fuel will wash the stuff out. Now you get one little leg down there in the hole and then just walk it around. And then when it's in, make sure you turn it a couple of times, okay? Now this ring gap is very important. I'm going to show you how I do it according to the 2-stroke engines. If anybody's familiar with those, they have a specific area and a specific way they want you to put the ring gaps. So, okay, this is piston number 2. Okay. And we go to piston number 3. Doesn't matter which piston until you get the rings on them. Now, this will be piston number 3 because this is ring number 3. There we go. Piston number 3. Now here's piston number 4. Grease it up. I was talking about friction and all that stuff because all this stuff has to seat in. Everything has to like wear together when you build these things, you know what I mean? So now get our handy dandy little cylinder. This is it's our ring compressor, okay? Now, a little grease in there, a little grease in there, and there, okay. We got that taken care of now. And take the rod off. Now you can use the tools that come supplied in the kit. They come here, and I'll take out the one for the rods right now. Just set them all over here. And when you're putting stuff together like that, try to use some fresh tools, you know, because it helps keeps them from stripping, you know. Actually, that's loose as a moose's goose. That ain't gonna work. I may have to resort to some of my other Allen wrenches that I had, or my old trusty Harbor Freight kit. Yeah, it's still a little loose too. These are almost like they're American sizes and not metrics. Let me see what I got over here as far as some other Allen wrenches. And I have some from the Dubro Links. They always give you a little Allen wrench with them. And I found out that the ones from the Dubro Links are a pretty good fit for the rods that they got. Gotta be this one, maybe? I don't know. There we go, try this one. If this is the one, I know I had one of these here, it worked very well. There it is. That's a lot tighter. Boy, if things are in there. Okay, there's one. And push down, and try to twist it back a little bit when you're unloosening these things, so it'll it'll help remove the screw. So here's how I do it. I take them out. And the rod cap, the lower part of the bronze bushing in the rod is going to come off with it. So I just kind of hold them both together. And you set them down. Like so. Now, I try to put this little thing facing forward, and I try to keep my ring on the intake manifold side. Okay, so this would be number 1. This would be your intake manifold side. I do that for the simple fact of what it does. When it pulls the fuel charge down in there, it'll help lubricate it. So it doesn't really matter, I don't think, where you put the ring, I should say, but I know on 2-strokes they want you to put the ring as close to the end port as you can get it. Now, there's our mark. I'm going to put that forward. Now you set this right on top like so. Take a screwdriver or whatever and try to, if you have it stuck out of the bottom just a little bit, it'll help line it right in there. You set it down, you push it in. Okay, pick that off. Now your piston's installed. Now, you can see here, once I push this up, I'm going to have to move that piston of the rod towards the center and push it right up and have it mate with the crankshaft. Now, grease. So here's what I use. I use HHSK, which is HHS 2000 from Worth, and I just put a little on the crankshaft itself. Now this will turn to like a grease, and I have the crank all the way down, and I push that all the way. That way there your working surface is as far up as possible. Now we know that this goes like that. I got my little marks forward. So if you say to yourself, I'm going to put all the marks forward, that way you know, in case the phone rings or something when you're assembling the thing, you got to answer it. There we go. Now, I'm going to use my little driver here to kind of snug them down a little bit. Now on them bearings, the bronze bushings that are in there, okay, they have a little tang on them, so they only go one way. Now, take my Allen wrench. You don't have to go ballistically tight on these things. I usually give them a little snug when they're tight, and then just go a little bit more. And when the wrench starts flexing a little bit, that's when you got. Now, there's number 1 is in. As you can see, one is in. Now we're going to go for number 2. Same scenario. Second verse, same as the first. But they tighten them things right up, boy. You do this for each rod. Loctite on these here. The way I'm thinking about it, let it kind of soak in a little bit. Set it down with that little mark forward. Make sure my ring is facing this way. Put my piston in there, and you take your fingernails and just slide. That's why I got fingernails. You slide it right down in there, and it helps it move right through. Okay, now mark forward, like so. Oh, something didn't jive there. There we go. Now, if the rod bearing falls out, don't be afraid to take the piston back out again and start over. You can always put it back in there without a problem. Now, get the grease. HHS. Now my rod cap. Mark forward. Like so. You already got the Loctite on it. Everything's good. One, two. Now it's getting stiffer as we go, but always give it a little turnover by hand. You know, that way you make sure everything's cool. Okay, now we're going to go piston number 3. And believe it or not, the short block will be almost done. It'll be that quick. It's the carburetors that take the time, you know, to put stuff together, you know. Hey, I'm using tools, guys. You guys are never see me do that often. Now, a little bit sticking out the bottom so it fits the hole. Now you go right in number 3. Pop it in there. Try not to force it too hard. If it doesn't work, wiggle this a little bit. That way it'll kind of fall right into place. Crank up. Up. So, grease, HHS. This stuff actually soaks into the bronze bushing, so that's what I like about it. And we use a little Loctite. These are a very simple engine. It's kind of like putting together a small block Chevy. I can put a small block and a big block Chevy together with my eyes closed. Some things I've built literally hundreds of those. My Z28, I think I had 11 or 14 engines in it. I can't remember now. Because I would blow them up on a Friday, and then all weekend rebuild one, put it in, and drive it to work on Monday. Okay, there's number 3, and we'll go to number 4. Get this puppy over here, and yeah, make sure you put a lot of pressure on these things. These things are in here pretty tight, so that way you don't strip them out, because once you strip them out, it's going to suck to put them back in again. Now, everybody else has built these things, like Johnny Q90. He did like one carburetor. He did like one rod and piston. I'm doing them all. So, now, lock tight. The cool thing is that when you grease the piston up to put the ring on it, it slides right through this ring compressor like nothing. The only thing that really holds it up is the ring. So let's see, we want the ring to face this way, like so. And put it there with our fingers. Ooh, that ring came right out of there. Did you see that? That's not cool. Now, we'll try this again. Didn't have a ring pop off like that before. This is why they say each ring is for each cylinder, you know? I have a little trouble with this one. Good thing I filmed all of them. There we go. Now walk it in there a little bit. Now you can walk it like back and forth to get it where you want it. A little mark forward, like so. And we'll put a little grease on this crankshaft right now. That way I don't want to fill up my holes. Now, in. Bring this thing all the way up. And trying to watch the camera as I do this too. That way you guys, make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. Now make sure your little mark is forward, like so. Right, there we go. All 4 pistons are in. Now it's a little stiff, but the break-in period, that's why these things get really hot when you first start them. That's why they say to run them rich. So you can't really turn the shaft with your fingers, but you can turn it here. But the longer this runs, the looser it gets. So, okay guys, that's part 1. We got the crank and pistons in, so we got the heartbeat of the engine in. So, stay tuned for the next one. Adios. Okay, here's what we're going to do next. We're going to put our starter one-way bearing on there and pulley, and we're going to put our flywheel on. So it says you need 2 washers. They're both number 81. Okay, and then we're going to go to let me get down here. There we go. Get our little pins. We got number 79, number 78. One's longer than the other. And then we're going to put the flywheel on and tighten the nut up. So here we go. Okay, now one little trick. Okay, everything's in your little containers here. Okay, now you can use a magnet to pick some things out, but other things they're non-magnetic, like the two little pins here, 78 and 79 there. They're not magnetic, so I take my little Q-tip and I stick in there and I grab it. So here's another little trick. Take a little grease and fill them little recesses up in the crankshaft with some grease. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because it helps everything stick. Now they say to use the two washers. You put them down first. Now there was actually 3 washers in there, and I don't know why. So there's the 2 washers are in there. And then they say to use the little drive pin. So number 79 is the longer one. Okay, you take the long pin and you put that in the slot. The grease holds it in, that way it don't fall off on the floor, and you'll see it's in there. Now this is very important. They say to have the brown side out. So here's what it's going to be. Motor clockwise, the starter motor is going to turn it. That's locked up, that's free. That's locked up, that's free. That turns to the whole bearing, that's free. So being that it runs counterclockwise, you're going to put it on this way with the brown part of the bearing facing outward. Now this is what I do. There we go. Make sure the pin fell out. Aha. See? That's why you always check it. Put that back up there, and we're going to do it again. Sometimes these things can be finicky. There we go. Now. That's better. So, try to make sure that's bind off. There we go. Now it's in. You may have to move it back and forth a couple of times, up and down, to make sure you don't lose the pin. That's in. It's pretty tight. It's pretty tight against the back of that block, isn't it? There's like hardly no room in there whatsoever. We'll pull it back and look at it, make sure it's not rubbing. Okay, because they do give you another washer, and I don't know why. It doesn't say. Okay, now we'll use the smaller pin, like it says. Number 78 goes in there, like so. And I get it in there. When I was a younger man, I was much better with my hands, if you know what I'm saying. Did I just say that? But I didn't use it for constructive things like this. I use it for other stuff. Now, you're going to look in there and you're going to see there's a little recess right there. And that goes right on the top of that, like so. Ta-da! Now you're going to get a little clacking out of this because of the rods. It's going to sound loose. Now see how easy that turns? Now, they give you a conical washer. Alright, it's kind of a, looks like somebody smashed it with a hammer, but what I usually do is I set that so it's tilting towards the top. And you put your nut on there, and then you tighten it. So I'm going to have to get me some tools here, because I didn't have that ready. totally got my head my ass, but I'll tighten that up later. So there we go. The bottom's done. Now we're going to come to the lower pan, and so we're going to need number 92, number 2, and the bolts are 77. So we're going to look in here to see where the bolts are. Let me see here. 44, 76, 77. So they're 3x8. So they're the shorter ones. Try to grab them all and dump them out. It'd be easier for me. Got one too long in there. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Get our gaskets. Now, one important thing, they give you some extra head gaskets, so you can you have spares. I only use the one head gasket. So the lower pan gasket is white. Okay. And you'll see that it only fits one way. Because if you put it this way, yeah, I guess they fixed that. So it's going to fit both ways. Good. Excellent. It's a Teflon style gasket, and I didn't really seal mine up. I just lightly put some grease on it and assembled it. So I'm not going to tighten this for the simple fact that I'm going to be removing it because I want to juice up the inside a little bit more. Actually, I can do that right now. Here's what I do. I take a little HHS and I shoot it in between the rods. Any surface that's down the pistons a little bit. Because I like to get the wrist pins and the pistons kind of lubed up also. And because they don't see much stuff until it's already running. So now, see how much freer that turns now? Because we got lubrication in there. So just because you lube up your rods and your cylinders, maybe the wrist pins are a little dry, huh? You know, you don't know. So this way here, now we know we did it. I'm going to put this back on here. Set that like that. And I'm going to get the other bit that I had here somewhere. That's probably not the one. Nope. Get the bigger one. This is why it takes so long for me to do a video, because I'm constantly grabbing tools. I'm not that organized sometimes, so forgive me, guys. Okay. They say to start with the center holes. Just get them started. I didn't Loctite my pan bolts because of the simple fact that I kind of wanted it serviceable, and so far on my other one I have not had them come out yet. So you don't want to over tighten the gasket, the Teflon gasket in there. You just want to evenly tighten everything. And they don't really have torque specs, but it would be cool if we could, because I do have a 1/4 inch torque wrench, and it's in inch pounds and millimeters. So now you notice there's 6 short bolts that go in the center, and the long ones, there's 4 long ones. one on each corner. And the reason they're longer is because that's those little pedestals that fit down in there. So there we go, which I will grab those right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if you're wondering where they are in the kit, they're with the carburetor horns, and your tappet covers and your rocker arms are over here in the corner. And I don't really think, I don't remember which was what, because I think they're pretty much the same. But these here are kind of, they're loose. So you put them at whatever angle you want when you want to make for your test stand. So I'm mounting the longer ones, I guess, on the engine side, because there's a long side and a short side. So I'll be taking these off anyway, but I'm putting them on here for an example for everybody to see if they want to build their test engine that way, like so. Okay, that completes the block for now, and we'll come back to the rest, and I will show you this stuff and the water pump, and we'll go to the cylinder head too. So we could actually probably put the cylinder head on next if we wanted to, but we'll see what the directions are. So okay guys, you guys have a good one. Like, share, subscribe. Wait for the next update on the video. I'm going to try to post these if I can, every night. It depends on how I feel when I get home. I haven't been feeling that good lately. I didn't think I was going to be able to do this tonight, to be honest with you. So like, share, subscribe. Tell all your friends, hit the notification bell, and you guys stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next video. Adios.